Partner swinging fantasy keeps haunting our relationship, and I'm torn between respecting his past desires and holding on to monogamy. I'm 29F in a 3-year relationship with 36 meters. He has hinted a few times at marriage, but there is one thing holding me back. About 6 months into our relationship, he revealed to me that him and his ex-wife had tried swinging a few times starting a year into their marriage and then a few times over the 7 years they were together. I didn't know much about the lifestyle, so I started listening to some swinger-hosted podcasts and looking into it more to see if it was a lifestyle I could ever consider. For him, he said it was an exciting, hot thing about the relationship, there was healthy communication, and that it made them, he and ex, stronger and less likely to ever want to cheat. After some deep inner reflection, I realized it wasn't something I wanted for myself. There are many reasons, but one of the bigger ones is I'm a/demisexual, I only experience sexual attraction through deep bonds. So having sex with people who I don't have a strong relationship with doesn't sound fun or hot for me. And I don't want to share my partner. So I guess also because I'm clearly monogamous with that kind of mindset. In bed he began sharing more and more his fantasy about taking me to a swingers club, and since it was during steamy time, I went along with his fantasy, responded positively. It's natural to share fantasies in bed, and even if not my thing, I believe in letting my partner play out a fantasy. But he started suggesting it outside of the bedroom casually, and once I came to the conclusion that it wasn't for me, I talked with him, around month 9. I shared my concern that since swinging is his one big fantasy, and thing that he has enjoyed doing in the past, could we ever have a future where he still is satisfied if it wasn't my thing? He was very understanding and sweet and assured me that he could be happy without a swingers relationship. For a year I felt pretty solid with his response. But as it continues to be his only fantasy that he shares in bed, it is hard for me to fully believe that he'll be happy marrying me. The other day he started talking in bed about how he was turned on by a thought he had. I asked him to share and he said he pictured me giving another guy a blowjob. I asked if he was doing anything to me in this fantasy or just watching. He said that there was another girl going down on him while I'm with the other guy. I know it's his kink, but it's hard for me to hear from that he's dreaming of another girl pleasuring him while he's currently having sex with me, and that is what turned him on in the first place. He brings up swinging in about 2/5 of our sex encounters. I have had 2 previous partners and they were more of the "you're the only one for me" kind of guys, and it made me feel special. So when he does this, I end up feeling like I'm not enough. I know it's a monogamous mindset, and my own insecurity. I share my insecurity about not being sexually enough for him, but I avoid saying it's because of those things he says in bed, because then he wouldn't be able to live out that kink at all, and I don't want to take that away from him. He is very open about all the things he and his ex-wife did, and I like that he feels comfortable to share without thinking I'll shame him or get upset. But honestly, it makes me feel lacking. He used to have 3 ways, do swaps, and basically all of his biggest kinks he got to play out in real life. With me, he can't. I truly love him and we're happy in every other sense. We have now lived together for a year and he wants me in his whole future. My question for anyone in this swinger community: if you happen to fall for a monogamous person, do you think you could be satisfied leaving the life, or would you possibly regret or resent marrying down the road? Or just have any thoughts to share in general? Anything might help me work my way to a conclusion. He and his ex only did it a couple times a year and it wasn't that big a part of their life, but a very happy one. I ask you because I can't speak to it with my friends. I think they'd form a bad view of him because they are all monogamous and probably would see it as him being driven by lust and not loving/respecting me. Update 1. Updating because I've had a few people in my DMs over the months asking how it worked out because they're in similar situations. We did break up a few months after my post. I had showed him my original post and talked with him about the unsureness I had been feeling. His response was, "Sure, if tomorrow you told me you wanted to swing, I'd be all for it. But I don't need that in our relationship." Despite his words, over the next few months our relationship felt off. Both of us were no longer comfortable, it seemed, mentioning marriage anymore, and while we were still enjoying each other's company and traveling and doing things we loved, the love and security feeling wasn't there. I would bring up that we didn't seem as connected, but he would say it was my anxiety talking in my head. We went to a Halloween party with our friends who are all in their 30s, 40s and been married anywhere from 5 to 15 years. The couple who was hosting the party were mid-30s with 3 kids. At the party the husband, I'll call him Trey, started flirting heavily with all the girls. He was very drunk, most of us were at some level of intoxication, and was being very touchy-feely. This was extremely unusual behavior for him. His wife, who I'll call Kayla, seemed a bit embarrassed, but was also giving us the okay with what was going on. We could tell to some degree they must be opening up their relationship in some way. Well, towards the end of the night Trey began to make out heavily with a girl in the corner of the pool who had been invited by them, but the rest of us had never met before. Her husband was socializing nearby, but he knew what was happening, so we all just shrugged it off as consenting adults and whatnot. However, when Kayla came outside it became obvious she wasn't okay with what she saw. She and Trey disappeared from their own party for a while and we all were wondering if we might need to head home and give them privacy. They came outside though and we could tell Kayla wasn't okay. Trey started apologizing publicly to everyone and said, "We've gotten into swinging but it's very new for us." Kayla and I promised we would not do things with others without one of us clearly giving the okay. We invited this couple over tonight with potential plans of going further with them. I fucked up and started initiating deeper while Kayla was inside the house and unaware and not present. Kayla privately later apologized to us saying she had not planned on our group knowing they were swinging and had wanted to keep it private. So when Trey had started flirting with everyone and being touchy-feely in general, she had felt embarrassed that we were also thrown of last this party she had hosted for us. And then when she had come outside to him already initiating with the couple they had invited, it had broken the boundaries she had set with him. I left the party upset for her. In my mind, Trey had cheated by breaking that boundary, and in front of everyone who she had not wanted to know about their open relationship. This is her one friend group she has, and I could understand not wanting to share that part of their lives with us since most the group is monogamous. My boyfriend's response was, yeah, he fucked up, but this is new for him and it's like a kid in a candy shop. I mentioned to him how he had once said that a benefit of swinging was less likely to have cheating in a relationship, but that to me this felt like cheating because if you set a boundary and break it with another person, that counts. It was a tense ride home. The next time we had sex, in the middle of it he started bringing up me kissing Kayla. And then him kissing Kayla. I didn't want to bring up this upset me while having sex because I just didn't know how. People pleaser in me hates making people feel awkward or bad in the moment. So I brought it up an hour afterward that him bringing up Kayla didn't feel right, especially after how that party had gone. He didn't argue about it and said okay, but I could see from his shut down facial expression he wasn't happy with my response. Next time we say Trey and Kayla, they had the couple from the party over at a board game night. Looks like they had worked things out and I was happy for them. They were very flirty and kissing on the other couple, and while it was still strange and new to see, I was happy they were happy. I was having a fun time with everyone, but I could tell my boyfriend was very moody and everyone kept asking him if he was okay. In the middle of a board game I had just started up with some friends, he came in and interrupted very moodily, "You ready to go?" On the car ride home I asked what was up, and he was pretty shut down. It clicked with me, he was jealous of the swinging happening in front of him. When I asked him if that's what it was, he said I wouldn't say jealous. I asked what would he say. He said he'd get back to me on it when he could put it into words. So I dropped it for then. But a few days passed and he wasn't showing signs of opening the conversation, and my anxiety started to grow until finally I brought it up again. He said it's just hard to see what I can't have right in front of me, to which I responded, it's hard for me to see you mad and moody about it because I know I'm the reason why. I'm the one keeping you from it. You say I'm enough but then you do things that make me feel like I'm not really. Please be honest with me. He went back to saying I was and that it was my anxiety saying that. I asked what we can do to make our relationship work better because this wasn't working. He mentioned I could initiate more in bed. I could understand that. While I'm a very responsive partner who never has turned down sex, I am not often the initiator. So I tried doing that and he turned me down 5 separate occasions for reasons like you just vaped and I don't like vaping because it leaves a sweet artificial taste on your mouth. He hates vapes a lot. Or I'm stressed with work. There was one night he was jacking off in the shower and I asked if I could join, and he said he'd come to the bed, but I said I'd just get in the shower with him. I'd worked out and felt gross, but he said he wasn't interested in shower sex, so never mind. I could get his reasons, but it left me vulnerable because initiating has always been hard for me and to keep getting turned down after he'd asked me to try it more was hard. Then one night he said, take charge, do whatever you want with me, don't be shy about it, whatever you want to do to me just do it. I started giving him a blowjob but to stall because I was panicking in my head of what did he want, because I felt like he was looking for me to do something particular. I've never been super shy in bed, so when he said those words I felt like he was hoping for something new or different in particular. Climbing on top and doing the basic dirty talk didn't seem like enough for what he was asking. I stopped to tell him because I'd never felt panic during sex like this. I said, hey, I know you want me to take charge, but is there something specific you'd like? He got frustrated and said, just be dominating like I do for you. Well, what he does for me is choking and ass smacking and name calling, but he has never expressed interest in that for himself and I didn't think that's what he actually wanted. So I asked, is there a video of what you want from me or specifics, because I don't want to dominate without knowing what it is you mean. He let out a frustrated sigh and said never mind. I felt pretty crestfallen as a people pleaser and said I'm gonna go get some air real quick. I went downstairs and went to Reddit to search how to dominate your man and get ideas and give myself a pep talk lol. I came back upstairs and heard him in the shower. So I opened the door to hop in and give it a go and realized he'd already jacked off after I'd left. I awkwardly got out of the shoes and cursed myself on awkwardness. Lol. Looking back I can't help but laugh at myself at trying to make it work with the wrong person. Let's just jump forward to the breakup because this post is already so damn long. I sat him down and said we're disconnected and not okay lately. And you say you want me, but I don't feel that from you, so I get the feeling you don't know what you want. He admitted he wasn't sure and needed time. So I said after 3 years if you don't know, that's the answer I need. I know we love each other, but we need to break up, this isn't it. He looked stunned. He began crying hard and asked me to stay in the same bed that night to hold me one last time. He cried the whole night while I comforted him and he kept saying I know it isn't fair for you to have to comfort me like this, but thank you because I need you right now. And also things like I've been an idiot because I thought some things were important and then this happens and I see what's actually important. He began asking for another chance and I said I wasn't sure I could give that because I'd lost trust in his love for me. He said he'd prove it back with time. Well, in under a month he said in bed this month we're doing anal and we're going to a sex club. I was cool with part 1, but not so much part 2, but gave him the benefit of the doubt that the second part was his fantasy in bed since he knew my limits at this point. But he brought it up again next time we were in bed and I stopped him and said, we are at the weakest point of our relationship that we've ever been, and you really want to bring a sex club with other people into the mix? It finalized for me the ending of us. And I'm so glad I did. Looking back, I can't believe I stayed as long as I did, because while he has the right to want what he wants, it was clear he wasn't being honest with himself. He wants to be a swinger and that's okay, just don't date a monogamous person and pretend otherwise. It was just hurting us both. I definitely grew from it because it made me realize what I wanted and needed in someone too. A year has passed and I am so happy and in love with the right person. My anxiety has magically disappeared, go figure. I feel like enough as a partner in every way. He's lighthearted, easy as breathing, and would do anything to make me happy, which is great because I'm a giver too, so we never run the risk of using each other. He cherishes me and I cherish him, and I didn't even know love could be this awesome. It's corny, I know. But for anyone out there that is wondering if you're with the right person, if you have to keep wondering and if you always feel like you're not enough, please be brave enough to leave what you know and go be happy elsewhere. It honestly blows my mind that people are still DMing me about this story. So here we go, the plot thickens, and yes, real life is far messier and more ridiculous than anything you could make up. First, it turns out my old post made the Reddit rounds locally. One of my old coworkers, let's call her Megan, figured out the situation was about me, because apparently, the details were a little too specific. I absolutely did not see that coming. Word spread. Suddenly, I found myself in several extremely awkward "did you write that thing about swinging?" conversations with people I'd never even imagined would have any idea. But the strangest consequence was this: Kayla, from the infamous pool party, texted me out of the blue 3 months ago. We never really talked one-on-one before, our friendship was always filtered through group dynamics. It was a Sunday afternoon, I'd just come home from buying raspberries at a farmer's market, and her name popped up on my phone. Her message just read, "Hey, can we get coffee?" This is weird, but I think you'll understand. I spent the next week imagining every possible scenario. Did my ex send her? Did I accidentally ruin her marriage? Was she pregnant and needed advice? When we finally met up, it was weirder but also not at all what I expected. She sat down, took a giant breath, and blurted, "Can I ask you for advice about being monogamous?" That coffee date turned into an accidental therapy session. Kayla told me the aftermath of the pool party was a total car crash for her relationship with Trey. Turns out, they tried to fix everything by going all in on swinging for about 6 months. She described it as like eating 17 ice cream cakes in a week. Amazing at first, then you're crying and you feel sick and you don't want to look at sugar again. Her words, "I kept hoping the adventure would fill the space that was missing, but it just turned the space into a crater." Trey, meanwhile, seemed like he was living his best life, new friends, new adventures, a sense of freedom, but Kayla's gut twisted every time she tried to act like she was truly in. She said reading my Reddit post made her realize she wasn't the problem, that wanting to be someone's only wasn't a flaw, just different wiring. They ended up in couples therapy, where, fun fact, both Trey and my ex had a session together, because apparently, there are support groups now for would-be swingers whose partners bailed. Who knew? All this would have been wild enough, but things completely cracked open last Thanksgiving. I was officially a year out from my breakup, solid with my new partner. He knitted me a scarf. People, I'm not making this up, and I get this text on Thanksgiving morning from an unknown number. "Hey, I know it's a lot, but I really need to apologize in person. Trey, at this point, I feel like I'm living in a network drama." Anyway, I said sure, mostly from morbid curiosity, and the urge for a story to share with my now very invested group chat. We met up at a public park, and Trey, who seemed fine at first, completely fell apart. He confessed that after Kayla moved out, his parade of partners just stopped being fun. He said he kept thinking about that night by the pool, about the boundary he'd crossed, and how much of what he thought he wanted was just not wanting to be alone. He apologized for making everything awkward for me. Apparently, word had gotten around the group and he thought maybe I blamed him for, as he put it, unleashing the Pandora's box of horniness on everyone. I probably laughed too hard at that, not gonna lie. What really caught me off guard, though, was how much regret he had, not about swinging, but about pretending, for Kayla, that he could be monogamous again after tasting the candy shop, as he said. His advice to me, which I almost want to tattoo somewhere for future dating reminders: you can fit yourself into someone else's fantasy for a little while, but eventually either you lose yourself or they lose you. I shared all this with my current partner, who, hilarious angel that he is, looked me right in the eye and said, "It's wild to me that people would rather blow up their own hearts than just say the awkward thing out loud." And that led to the most open discussion about boundaries and kinks I've ever had, with zero drama or panic. We genuinely find each other exciting because we want the same things, which now seems like literal rocket science after what I went through. But the story doesn't stop there. After all this, there was an accidental reunion/intervention. Kayla, Trey, my ex, yes, the infamous ex, and me, all kind of bumped into each other at Trey's birthday, which Kayla helped plan for the sake of the friend group. It was more awkward than any Thanksgiving dinner with estranged family, but somehow, it ended up clarifying a lot for all of us. Trey and Kayla actually seemed to be working toward a new friendship. My ex awkwardly apologized for, in his words, making things about what I thought relationships could be, instead of what we actually were. He's dating a woman I later found out has a whole polycule, and I hope he's genuinely happy doing his thing. Kayla, on the other hand, is not dating anyone and says she's happily monogamous with my houseplants. As for me, here's where the story gets almost too on the nose. I recently got engaged. In a kind of full circle move, I told my fiancé about everything I'd been through, the lessons, the sex club proposals, the killer anxiety. His response? If the most exciting thing we do is argue about what toppings to get on pizza, I'm a happy man. Cheesy, yes, pun intended, but I felt like the luckiest person alive. So, big twist ending. Instead of swinging, we're now organizing a massive group road trip for all our friends, including Kayla and Trey, to the world's dorkiest Renaissance fair. No poolside makeouts this time, just sword fights and turkey legs. Happiness, apparently, doesn't need to be as complicated as we make it. Wow. Okay, so here's your next wild update, because somehow real life is determined to keep topping itself and this story refuses to end quietly. About a month after my last update, after the whole accidental group therapy birthday with Trey, Kayla, the ex, and me, my peaceful new life started to intersect with those old circles in the weirdest ways. It started innocuously enough. Kayla and I, now closer than ever, houseplants, cats, and memes have kept us bonded. We're having our now regular anti-drama brunches. We just settled into a pancake truce about maple syrup versus Nutella when she confided that Trey wanted to do a group camping weekend, as one of those new life, new harmony gestures. Think friendship owls, not key party. That's how she pitched it, at least. Surprisingly, all the original Halloween party crowd, including Megan the accidental gossip messenger, naturally, wanted in. My fiancé, whose greatest claim to wildness is a passionate hatred of pineapple on pizza, agreed with all the chill of a golden retriever, and Trey wrangled a few new relationship, new boundaries friends. The plan, no weirdness, no secret couples, just s'mores and stargazing. That was the plan. Of course, by 11 p.m. on the first night, after way too much boxed wine, it got real. There was a spontaneous, no-holds-barred truth or dare game around the fire. To my horror, the dares got extremely mild, singing boy band songs, but the truths, eesh, my ex's girlfriend, the polycule one, let's nickname her Sky because the full list of partners is as dizzying as satellites, asked everyone, what's your romantic deal breaker? I braced for awkwardness. Instead, people gave honest, sometimes vulnerable, and occasionally bizarre answers. Someone said, people who hate dogs, which sparked a 30-minute tangent. Then, the moment. Sky looked at me and, way too gently, asked, would you ever try the lifestyle again? Or did all that just leave a bad taste? I didn't know if she meant swinging or just messy relationships in general, but before I could answer, Kayla, bless her, jumped in with, she's got what she needs now. The rest is someone else's circus. There was genuine laughter, a little awkwardness, but for the first time I didn't feel like the straight-laced downer. There was a weird, almost visible relief in the group. It was like that one moment at a reunion when everyone finally admits that the picture-perfect couple from high school was never actually happy. The weirdest update, though, comes courtesy of Megan, who's blossomed as a sort of relationship translator for our friend circle post-Reddit expose. She's even started a podcast, which I swear I did not inspire. She shared, over burnt marshmallows, that since the drama, 3 other couples from our group confessed to trying, and then quietly abandoning, the lifestyle after that infamous Halloween party. One couple had a hilarious horror story about misreading open to new experiences as let's meet at this terrifying chain motel in the suburbs and pretend it's sexy. They lasted 15 minutes, tops, before bailing for IHOP and laughing their heads off. For all the extremity of our experiences, cheating, heartbreak, Reddit notoriety, so many people landed somewhere a little boring, a little safe, and so much happier than they expected. But the next morning brought the most surreal moment yet. I woke early, walked down to the lake for coffee, and found my ex, sitting cross-legged on the dock, staring at the sunrise like he was having an existential crisis. He asked if I minded sharing the silence, and then, unprompted, told me he was finally, actually happy. He admitted he'd spent the last year chasing every novelty and connection he'd ever fantasized about, but none of it hit the way he'd hoped. I realized I hated feeling replaceable, he said. Turns out, you never made me feel that way, you just made me question if I made you feel that way. I didn't want more bodies, I wanted more belonging. I'm not kidding, I almost dropped my thermos at that. If only therapy came with lakeside sunrises and actual epiphanies, half the world's problems would be solved. Here's where it gets, the only word is redemptive, I guess. That afternoon, the whole group hiked out to a waterfall, everyone sweaty and slightly hungover, but honest and relaxed. People actually talked about what they wanted, needed, and regretted from the past few years. Kayla and Trey joked about the swinger era like survivors of a really intense summer camp, and Sky turned out to be a walking manual on not just communicating boundaries, but living them. There were no hookups, no drama, just clarity, and, for the first time in years, some of these friendships started to grow back in honest, realistic ways. Before we left, Kayla and I sat watching the woods. She nudged me and said, "Can you believe we both thought, at some point, that being someone's adventure was the same thing as being loved? We promises to call bullshit for each other, from now on, forever." As for me, well, my fiancé and I spent most of the weekend holding hands, debating the merits of cheddar versus Swiss for camping sandwiches. And later, back home, he grinned at me and said, "This makes me love my quiet life with you even more. Adventure is overrated unless we're doing it together." So, the happily ever after isn't a wild party or some cinematic reconciliation. The story became about becoming honest, about who you are, what you want, and finally learning, through egregious amounts of trial and error, that you don't have to contort yourself to fit someone else's dreams. I wouldn't trade a second of it, honestly. And if somehow this gets screenshotted into another Reddit group, so be it. Let it be known, the best thing I ever did was step out of the candy shop, and into a life that actually fits. So, you all want another update? I honestly thought the last bonkers camping trip tale was going to be the finale, credits rolling, lessons learned, everyone's nose out of other people's bedrooms, but apparently the universe has different ideas for me. Or maybe my social life just runs on sitcom logic at this point. Either way, buckle up. It started, as most disasters do, with a group chat. Kayla, yes, our newly monogamous, houseplant-loving legend, texted out of the blue, "Y'all, does anyone want to come to a trivia night fundraiser for my work? Drinks, prizes, and promise, no themed sexual confessions." Several of us jumped at the chance, since frankly, a night of competitive knowledge sounded like the most wholesome thing this friend group could muster. Amazing how wrong you can be. Trivia started off normal. We argued about whether Alaska or Texas had the most coastline. It's Alaska, for the record, thank you, third grade geography. Then the bar did what bars do and rolled out 2-for-1 margaritas, and suddenly team sword fights and turkey legs. Guess who named us? My fiancé is still peak dork, was getting competitive. At some point, Megan, the accidental spreading the Reddit truth MVP, sidled up to me with a look I recognized all too well. "FYI, she whispered, your ex just walked in. With Sky, and someone else?" I risked a look over my shoulder. Sure enough, there he was, in all his anxious, slightly too tan glory, flanked not just by Sky, still polycule, but apparently now on excellent terms with all parties, but also by a tall, tattooed woman with a come-at-me stare who radiated the calm of a Buddhist monk and the confidence of a lion. If life were a movie, everything would go slow-mo now. My future husband, cheerfully oblivious, noticed my stare and perked up. "Do we know them? We should invite them to join the team." Clearly, he hasn't lived enough sitcoms for one lifetime. Things got not messy, exactly, but tense. After the trivia rounds, the inevitable group mingling began, and the ex made his way over, nervous, awkward, not quite making eye contact. He introduced the woman. "This is Harper," he said, and added, with a half grimace, well, we're still figuring things out, but I'm happy." And here's the kicker, Harper was cool as hell. It was immediately obvious that she ruled the dynamic, not in a dom way, though my group would have loved a label, but in that honest, I know exactly what I want and will never ask you to twist yourself for me kind of way. And because the universe is absolutely hilarious, she turned out to be a former therapist turned tattoo artist, specializing in memorial ink for people starting new chapters. Within minutes, she, Kayla, and I were swapping stories about our mutual love of bad horror movies, and Harper dropped this line: "You ever notice how people keep telling themselves they want wildness, but what most of us actually crave is proof you won't leave when you're not exciting?" Cue group stare. I wanted to slow clap, but apparently that's less chill than nodding solemnly. The night kept going. At one point, Sky cornered me with a friendly drink and, in all sincerity, wanted to know if I was truly as zen now as I seemed, or if there was still part of me that resented everything: the failed experiments, the try-harder years, the epic breakup. I surprised myself. I said, "No resentment. Just massive relief. The messy stuff taught me to want what fits. Because now, it does." She grinned, high-fived me, and declared, "Sometimes boring is the best kink of all, but reality has a sense of dramatic timing." Just as we were winding down, the ex and I found ourselves alone for a second, awkward, but not painful anymore. He told me, hesitating, that he'd started journaling. That therapy and Harper, and, weirdly, watching Kayla fall in love with her snake plant, helped him realize he confused sexual novelty for emotional connection for most of his life. "I'm still gonna be me," he said, "but I see now I didn't need to convert anyone to my terms to feel whole." It landed differently this time. It felt honest, not defensive, not the "I could change" or "you're just anxious" gaslighting of before. I told him so. And then, because apparently I can't escape real talk, he said, "You look happy." Like, actually. And I am. The future is quieter, cozier, all inside jokes and pancake debates. But here's the oddest, sweetest twist. Kayla pulled me aside before we left and asked if I'd join her for her next plant nursery run. "I realized," she said, "you can only bloom where you're planted, but you need other weird perennials beside you." I almost cried in the parking lot. Sue me. So, here's the new lesson. Growth can be huge and messy, but sometimes the bravest thing is letting yourself enjoy how beautiful, simple, peaceful, honest connection can feel. Oh, and if you want a truly surreal full circle, Harper somehow convinced half of us to get matching tiny tattoos. Something silly, inside jokey, nothing anyone's grandma would recognize as salacious. I picked a little sword, guess why? Kayla picked a basil leaf, Harper did a snake, and, in the end, Megan got alpha gossip in nearly invisible ink, for the memes. She declared. If Reddit keeps asking for updates, I'll laugh, because at this point, my life is less about swinging and more about finding, and staying with, the people who make you excited just to be yourself. And you know what? I wouldn't change a damn thing.